Hello, everybody. No, wait, that's Jordan Peterson. Hello, I see the assassins have failed. For the first in a while, Fringe Encounter we have with this how to understand the world, but I'm going to call him Sam.
Yeah. No, that's fine. That's my normal name. It's probably easier.
Sam, you said you reached out to me saying Paul Vanderklay was too big,
Yes.
and you'd very
Yes.
much like to talk.
Yes, I would. Because, firstly, I was sort of following archetypes, right? Or like the narrative structure, where what I'm mostly good at is, the sort of the crunchy, the detail, well, not the detail so much, but the theoretical models. And then those would count more as weapons or tools or that sort of thing. And so then
Yeah,
the next
all
step,
right. I'm
yeah,
on board. I'm on board. But
yeah,
really, we should go with who the hell are you?
that's okay. Yeah, my name is Samuel Peter McDowall. I'm from New Zealand, and yeah, you can read any portents you want into it. Names Samuel and Peter. You can or you cannot. And then, yeah, I'm an amateur metaphysicist, I think I'd say. Which means I like making, models, looking at about how the world works, how the structures work, and,
Are these mental
yeah.
models, or do you do them in a CAD, or is there someplace people can find them?
Um, yeah, I've got them up on my channel, How to Understand the World. They're mental, they're theoretical, they're for how to think about things.
Okay.
It's for, making your brain,
So is it like
coding your brain.
assembling archetypals into like a prototype, like adding archetypes until you got what you think is the system lens?
Yeah, sort of, but also it's not just building them up. Oh, where are my hands? My hands are there. It's not just building them up and up and up. It's trying to get them elegant, right? Because what a metaphysic is, I think metaphysics, ontology, and epistemology are all basically the same. It's all basically the same stuff where you're trying to
That's
talk about.
good because like fucking ontology and epistemology, the
Yeah,
definition refuses to stick in my head. But
yeah. No,
metaphysics,
that's
I
yeah.
got. And
No,
so if
I'm
we all
exactly the
feel the
same.
same,
Yeah,
then
yeah. I
I'm all
heard you
right.
say that. I was just listening to your interview with Jordan Hall like 5 minutes ago, and I heard you say that, and I thought that's exactly how I thought about it. Because it's
God
all to
bless
do
Jordan
with.
Hall. That video has
Yeah, yeah,
made me $2. Man,
yeah,
I get most of my income is people being generous, but like actual YouTube just watching video
yeah,
money, $2 for that Jordan Hall.
yeah, yeah. No, that's good. What
So
was I
it's not
saying?
just building the system, but
Yeah, it's getting it elegant, right? So, you have these things, elegant and powerful, both of those things. Because, Wikipedia just lists 100 different metaphysics, because they can't really interact with each other. Like, if you say, oh, the world is made of water, earth, fire, and air, and someone else says, oh, the world is made of matter, you can't prove anybody wrong there. It's like,
two lenses they're looking at the same thing with.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But then sometimes you can choose, well, which is more elegant. Well, one of them has four categories, the other only has one, so matter might be a bit more convenient. Not that I believe in matter, but um,
Well, it only looks simple on the surface because as soon as you got matter, then you got a
yeah,
whole periodic table of things that you can
yeah,
differentiate
yeah, for
by.
sure. Yeah, and you have all these grounding problems where it's like, oh, what's the chair made of? Is the chair made of matter? It's like, well, yes. Well, what's matter made of, right? And then
So
is a quark made of matter, or was matter made of quarks? And you just can go round and round in circles.
true enough,
It's like,
true enough. So powerful and elegant.
yeah.
Give me an example of how powerful would play out.
So one of the ways materialism, which it's the most common one, so it's easy to use as the example, isn't very powerful, is one of them is quantum uncertainty, because uncertainty isn't a thing. You can't say the unknown is matter. and then another one is consciousness, and the other one is the present. So all three of those, like consciousness and the present, are to do with where you're looking from, and like, so you can't see them basically by definition, because
They're part of the mechanics through which you see.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like, yep. And so like in materialists, they're always talking about the hard consciousness problem and like what is time and all this sort of stuff, because they can't explain it properly because their metaphysic doesn't really leverage that area or whatever. Yeah, but that's where the one I built, I think, is better.
So ones that don't blind you give you more power in this sense.
Yes. They don't put any tar pits in your way where you can just get stuck going in circles and circles and circles. And this is also one of these things where it's, dealing with the unknown is something that a lot of people struggle with. Like, even with Paul Vanderklaan on his channel and stuff a bit, I was hearing people talk about, oh, you just can't know. But that's not how you look at it in the logical sense. In the logical sense, it's like, I don't go 1 divided by 0, oh, you just can't know. I try to build a proof for why it is undefined or infinity or any of these unknowable, there's different types of unknowable category. And you can try to mechanistically prove that it's one category or the other. And so if you can prove that something's undefined, you can stop thinking about it. You don't get sort of stuck in a tar pit anymore.
But do you think you have to prove it first to get off the hook of thinking about it?
Yeah, logically, sort of, because otherwise you just keep asking the question over and over again. But like, if you can prove that something can't be known, then you can stop thinking about it. In a way.
So I don't need to prove it can't be known to stop thinking about it. But
I do. I just like.
I acknowledge my processing methods aren't universal. We'll say that.
Yeah.
So, are you coming to show us and walk us through your model?
Sure, that makes
sense. On your agenda?
Yeah, so one of the other things I liked about, what I saw with you, is you mentioned flotillas, right? Something about that. And I'd like to know a bit more about what you mean by that, but it seems to fit very, very well with my metaphysic, in terms of like what you can and can't know.
Well, that's how I see what we call TLC.
Yeah.
Is a flotilla of channels, because I see every channel as a ship.
Yeah.
And the Discord server of that channel is like under decks of that ship. But I needed it to be it's the water's there because it's the sea of information anyway.
Yeah.
And other than the YouTube as a thing, but whatever this place is,
I see. It's sort of metaphorical.
I had to tie into the fire ants in the flood, because that was a solution to this flood of information. Was the way fire ants like form a raft out of their own, out of everything they are, to keep the whole colony afloat.
Okay, that's cool. Because what I was thinking is, the way, I don't know. Yeah, it could be a seagull.
It's like we kind of move through topical waters, and channels can break off and go into like this channel went off and visited the Isle of Instagram for a minute, or off topic, like nobody else in the corner cares about it. They're not really around, but they're still one of us, of us, and can come float alongside us again.
Yeah, every now and again. No, that makes sense. I think that works very well with how I see just information or image, which is basically reality in general. Because it's like, there's no zero speed universally, right? Like, we normally define zero speed as relative to the surface of the Earth. But, I could define it as relative to the centre of the sun or the centre of the galaxy or the surface of the moon or whatever. So I could say, oh, my desk is going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and I'm not, and I'm going at 1,000,000 miles an hour. if I put my zero frame somewhere else. But
For a
normally,
point of comparison that doesn't move.
yeah,
You'll find it out.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But the reason we use the Earth is because it's convenient, right? Like that's the reason we treat it as
More
zero.
pragmatic,
Yeah, exactly.
functional,
Yeah,
useful to do so.
yeah.
It's
You
more
have
than
to do
convenient.
less. Yeah.
It,
You
it,
know,
it,
the
uh,
maths would
it,
get impossible pretty quick.
yeah, like not doing so. But yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. Yeah, and so that's basically how a lot of things work, is you have to set zero locally so that everybody knows what it is. And then the real task is translation. So like, yeah, you don't sort of you can sort of put up a standard that everybody uses, and that makes it easy to translate there and back. You know, sort of like a relay tower, like a common ground sort of thing. But like treating that as universal isn't really the same thing. It's
All
well,
right.
it's in common, but it's it's fractal. You have sort of fractal layers of common ground, as opposed to you know like. But people keep asking me, "Oh, what does God see? What does God think?" But like, if God sees stationary as the center of the universe, that's beyond. I don't think he'd want us to try to use that as the definition of stationary. Like, I think he'd come to us where we are and use our language, and that's what we should be sort of looking to do as well, to a large degree.
With each other.
Yeah. Like trying to find people's languages, however they talk, how they think, so you can speak to them.
If you have something to say.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. If you just have things to show off, maybe they could learn yours. But,
And you seem to. Let's load up your model there and walk through it.
yeah, so the model is... Oh, have I lost you? No, back. So the model is perspective, image, and potential. So, there's a box, you don't know what's inside it, so it contains potential, it contains the unknown. And then you open it, your perspective goes into it, and the potential resolves into an image. And so the nuts and bolts of it is the perspective is that which defines, the image is the definition, and the potential is that which is yet to be defined. So in a given frame of reference, the perspective and potential are both undefined. And that's the trick. So it's elegant because there's only the image is the real thing. The image is the only thing with any form or any definition. And the perspective is the thing doing the defining, the potential is the thing becoming defined. So everything is an image. My metaphysic is an image. I'm looking at you, that's an image. But it's just every time you shift your perspective, you have to translate everything. So
Or shifting your perspective is the translation.
Yes. And the only real problem, and this is where so many of the classical paradoxes and contradictions come, is when people switch their perspective without knowing that that's what they just did. So if I say, oh, my desk is going 1,000,000 miles an hour, but I'm stationary, I've merged two perspectives without sort of realizing that's what's happening, and that's why I've got a contradiction going. So it's like a failure to properly translate or notice that you've switched perspective that causes most of the problems.
Or like a disconnect from your reference point. And this.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought there was going to be slides or something.
Yeah, no, I've got it simpler than that. I'd need slides for the stuff I don't understand as well, but...
It kicked me right in the shenanigans. Me and Afriel are about to go through the raw stuff. And it breaks down it's channel bullshit. Or not bullshit, but it's channeled. One or the other.
What's raw stuff?
The raw material.
Oh, yeah.
These three people went channeling in the 80s. But it breaks things down into the significator, the potentiator, and one other thing, maybe the matrix. I don't know. There's another one. And those that perspective I already had came up in me to translate onto what you were saying in a manner I
Yeah,
could
yeah,
change the perspective.
yeah, yeah. Use that.
So elegant, yes. Powerful, how?
Because one, it make people worry. People get tar-pitted on quantum uncertainty for a start. They're all like, "What does this? What does this mean?" Niels Bohr famously said, "Stop thinking and calculate." Like the unknown, the uncertainty. You have all these atheists like inventing an entire multiverse just to try to cope, basically. There's a lot of people stuck. But if you say, look, potential is that which is not yet defined, it just is undefined, you stop thinking about it. It's like, and it makes quantum mechanics normal, because everything you don't know is undefined. So, like,
All right, making quantum mechanics normal sounds like a big leap. So unpack
yeah,
that. And
yeah, you sort of flip things around. So, like, basically, in quantum mechanics, when you don't know something, you sort of just draw a probability field, and then when you find out what it is, you say, okay, now it's there. And that's basically how I think the world works, in terms of, like, if I can't see outside, I can just be like, well, the weather is unknown, right? And then when I see it, now it's known. And so this has all these retroactive things. It's not like it wasn't existing and then it becomes, but once you see it, it retroactively has existed that way all the way through history. And so you have
that holds with my supposition that the present can write the past, and
yes,
the present writes in both directions.
yes, and it also holds with a lot of the sort of the miracle stories you hear people tell, where it's sort of like, but it's like, oh, you pray for something, and then somebody turns up at your door 1 minute later who's been travelling for 3 weeks, and and that's sort of that thing. So, God could, so I guess then I would end up even going further and saying it's God of the gaps almost, where God likes to reveal himself to us through the things, through resolving.
What's your God of the gaps? Because my God of the gaps is just the thing where every time humans get to we don't know, we put God there, and then we try to close the gap between what we know and
yeah. I sort of think it's like, because even if you say there's the unknown, right? It's like, well, what chooses if it's rainy or sunny? Like what actually made that decision? If it's an unknown that resolves into a thing.
Like what? And so the mechanism of resolution is.
Yeah. How's it
deciding? Somehow.
Yeah, exactly. How does it know whether to go left or right?
No, it's just like the application of agency. That's the one that fell. The application of agency is and when you invoke the word decide, and then when you're talking about something like the weather, makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah. But
because there was 47 people praying for rain, and 63 people that wished it wouldn't rain.
Yeah. Well, then God can decide to make it hail or whatever.
Surprise!
Yeah.
It's been a while since we had a frog storm.
Yeah. Maybe they're coming soon.
Or has it? Or has it?
Yeah, maybe that's the internet's weather most days. Like,
the rage storm front over this.
Yeah, that could be a bit even. Like just doing a weather forecast for the internet.
We expect the politicians on the left to be whining about this today.
Yeah,
that'd be good. So, on behalf of the Fraternal Regiment embodying narcissistic sociopathy.
Oh yeah.
When did you start watching my channel and why?
Well, Paul Vanderklay, in a lot of ways, he was one of us. Or like in terms of my tribalism, I can look at him and see that oh,
Is
you
there
know,
a Calvinist or?
no, it's the metagellical thing he uses. Like, I sort of just listen to him talk, and I'm like, oh yeah. My friend, if he lived in my town, my parents would know him like 100%, and like, and so he always recommended you, and so I was like, well, that makes sense. And I watched some of your stuff, I looked at that, and I thought, just following the archetypes again, it's like, if I have these very crunchy sort of ideas and I'm looking for a way to apply them, in most of the video games, you go to the tutorial wizard, or like, that sort of thing.
Mm.
So if I follow the archetypal string, that would mean going to you, probably. Right.
I do see the game a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. I'm lost in my shuffle. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've lost my train of thought too.
So
Yeah.
what
There's one other
archetypes
thing.
are you talking? Because that's like your elegant system of 3 parts does not
Yeah.
include a pantheon of archetypal embodiments.
Well, they'd all be images, right? So it's like, so all of these different, so you can have a bunch of different senses. You can have eyes, ears, nose, and all these are different ways of getting, of looking at something. And so, like, for example, even in a simpler sense, you can have, if you just have a blue light detector, you look around, you point it at everything, and everything is blue, right? And you say like, oh yeah, that's blue, this is more blue, that's less blue.
Yeah.
And there's not really a limit to to the numbers of perspectives you can take. But some of them are more useful because they sort of reveal more stuff. And I think narrative structure is useful in terms of like, it's a lens you can take, which gives predictive power.
We like that.
Yeah.
And so how do you use that? For an example of using it for predictive power.
The simplest example would just be he who lives by the sword dies by the sword, which is that, like, the most likely people to die violently would be murderers, and whenever you live in a certain way, people think it's okay to turn that around. Give back what you dish out. Yeah, exactly. Like Ben Shapiro lost so much of his reputation when he lost a debate. Like, and that's what
selling pillows.
Yeah, maybe, but if you build your reputation on something, then that sort of gets undermined. Yeah, in exactly the same way. But yeah, a lot of narrative stuff, I find it's mostly just intuitive. It's harder to bring to the surface. But this is also, sorry.
Well, that's like a great example because, like, as a narrative lens, you can cast a whole lifestyle category.
Yeah.
It's like you can put a narrative in one sentence and convey that much information.
Yeah, it can be very condensed and very abstract, which also helps it scale a bit, I think, sometimes. Like, like a worldwide audience doesn't necessarily need to know the difference between Auckland University and Wellington University. But if I'm just like, oh yeah, I was looking for treasure or something, like, you can understand it a bit easier. And then there was one other thing I was thinking about. So I was wondering if I should talk about here. If it's okay for me to just randomly bring up topics.
Yeah. But you change your mind about having done so. It's just a recording. So we're in good fit.
Yeah. No, that's good. So I'd heard you mention that... Oh, what was it? Okay, now I'll start at a different point. So one of the big problems that I see sort of like tearing or just sort of twisting everything up is this confusion about like male and female and masculine and feminine and this whole area. Like you see Paul's church getting like messed up by it and all that sort of thing. And so I have like models and stuff that solve that. But it's like
What X are you solving for when you say solve that?
I think the culture war aspect, or like, the funny thing is even the psychologists don't know what male and female is, right? But there's like,
But Dog
but
Breeders
also the
sure
sin.
tells you.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't that weird?
It is, it is. But it's sort of like, the thing is, there's the both sides of the church almost. Like you have the blue church, which is like love and accept and stuff, and you have the other side, which is more like do what the Bible says. But there is a problem with like
But isn't the Blue Church just the Church of Set?
I don't know. Maybe we're using different word, meaning it to use different things.
Like for me, the Blue Church is like because we're the majority,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
So blue
And
is a normal sort of thing.
as in normalized by the
Yeah,
broadcast media. Like they can
yeah,
basically make these people into any shape they want to,
yeah,
and
yeah,
they've aimed that shape at anti-life,
yeah,
anti-natalism, and
yeah,
those
yeah, for
people
sure.
have then tried to have to
Like,
then whatever system those people were in, such
yeah,
as church, they had to try and work those views over
yeah, yeah,
on
no,
behalf of the comfort they feel in conformity, maybe.
yeah, yeah. I'd think of it as like the sin would be like homo productivity, where they're only using like the feminine desire and doubling down on it to cause sterility. But in terms of the people, I often would think of it as like in my mind, it's like my Protestant deep state, right? Like,
Protestant deep state,
it's like
like the
the
Southern
people,
Baptist Convention. What does that mean, Protestant deep state?
sort of like the establishment, the people who go into the government, like I have a lot of bureaucrats sort of in my tribe,
Ah,
like that sort of thing. But then you
sure.
have, yeah, I see it as like one group, which is like splitting into the metagelicals and the bureaucracies. So it's like,
The body of Christ versus the body of state.
yeah, something like that.
All right.
But it's also like, it's sort of very invisible church, but it's like focusing on the one hand, Jesus is, trying to follow the spirit of Jesus' teaching. Right? I don't want to say the Protestant deep state is like completely sinful. I do think that they're trying to like do the
Like,
spirit of what Jesus did in terms of like accepting people and stuff.
he ate with the tax collectors.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
fine.
yeah, exactly.
If
Like,
only he had
it's
encountered
fine.
eunuchs in the Gospels.
Yeah. What is it? But yeah, so the tension I see, right, inside the church, which I think is in Paul van der Klee's church and that sort of thing, would be you have the Sermon on the Mount, right, where Jesus says it's not just the physical action that matters, it's, almost the desire. To lust is to commit adultery, to have anger is to commit murder. And so you have this sort of abstraction that makes it way more intense. So it's not like there are some people who are sinners and some people who are good. It's like everybody's a sinner all the time. And it's not
No,
so... You don't reckon?
no. It's saying like the misorientation of your perception is what's sinful.
Yeah. Yeah, instead of desire, perception orientation.
I mean, because
That actually works better. Yeah.
what he's doing is going from like, all right, there's following the law, and then there's the spirit of the law,
Yeah.
and the spirit of the law is such that like your spirit can be pointed at the wrong things.
Yes. Yes, no, I really like that. That works even better with my idea than what I was thinking. So, you have, like...
Remember me as you take it on to fame and fortune.
Exactly. Yeah. So you have like that thing where you have orientation of, so an abstraction from physical action to orientation of perspective or perception. And so if we wanted to make sex and sexuality have the same pattern, you would have to change maleness to a masculine perspective almost, femaleness to a feminine perspective, like the act of sex to sort of productivity, or like children to productivity in some way. And then you'd also need a pattern where if you mix the masculine and feminine perspectives, you get good productivity, but if you double down on masculine or double down on feminine perspectives, you get big problems. So I think that if you wanted to translate the Old Testament teaching into the New Testament teaching, in the spirit of copying Jesus, like, I think that's what you'd be looking for. And then...
Don't know. First thing that happened when you were saying that is I remember that I come from a time when there was such a thing as a popular book called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And then I got off to riffing on whether or not that would exist. Like, what if we covered it as a stream or something? But what do you mean by doubling down on the male perspective?
What did you say? You said orientation of attention. So it's sort of like... So if you think that everybody should think like that, right? Like, you're trying to get something done by just saying, oh, we just keep doing it this way, we keep looking at it this way, and we almost like a purity spiral. Like, you just think... So, I should have said... So the simple way of understanding is the masculine perspective would be sort of questing. You're trying to get everything into just one sort of singular goal, and then the feminine perspective would be balance. So you're just trying to keep everything, in proportion and perspective. And so doubling down would be, it's all about the quest, it's all about the goal, you're trying to push everything else aside. And if everybody is trying to do that, and you kick out anybody who says anything otherwise, it'll turn into the strong crushing the weak, because whoever seems to have the clearest idea will just take over, and everybody else gets kicked out. And so that's tyranny. And so that would even be the reason tyranny is bad. It's not just the ends justify the means, because you can be like, oh, tyranny is good if you get good results. The tyranny would be bad because it's homoproductive.
Homogenizing.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and then the feminine one, balance, that's just, that's what a lot of the blue church in both senses has fallen into, where it's like, just trying to keep everything smooth, keep everything nice, keep everyone happy, keep everyone accepted. And you just lock yourself into like an entropy trap, where there's nothing new, there's no new life, and everything just gets like shriveled, and there's self-devouring, self-cannibalism, where anybody who stands out, they're now unbalanced, so you have to drag them back in. And so, like, people, the leftists on Twitter who sort of keep cancelling their own, and
they're still there? That. I thought they flittered off to blue sky.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But, devouring your own, even if you think they were causing problems, in the end might justify the means, like communism or whatever, it's bad because it's homoproductive. So it sort of would be inherently bad.
You really say homogenizing, man? Homoproductive?
Homogenizing. Maybe, yeah.
Homoproductive is getting to me. I got to refill my coffee. We'll let everybody enjoy this. Ta-da!
Yeah.
Oh. What's the at of your channel?
I think it's just how to understand the world on
Without
YouTube.
spaces?
I think it's the same as I've written it here,
Oh.
but it's fairly small, so sometimes you have to specifically search channel.
Yeah, that's what I'm attempting to do. This might be you. How to understand truth, how to understand reality, and how to
Yeah,
understand spirit. Is this you?
yeah, that's me.
This is your big coming out party as far as the corner is concerned, maybe, eh?
It is, yeah.
Share the screen. This one. It looks like there. If you're in the, tell me about this logo you have here, sir.
Um, I like yellow and black, I think, as like a color palette in general. But that one, yeah, I just
Some kind
found
of
something.
rune. Did the AI make you a powerful rune?
No, I just image searched and then cropped it till it looked good. It's a
It
bit of
looks
a
like
placeholder in some ways.
a
I'd be open
planet
to it
split
more.
in half by a solid
Yeah,
line of blackness with stars and
yeah,
other planets around it.
yeah,
And is that
yeah,
Uranus?
that's what it
An
is.
orangified Uranus?
Maybe.
I like your video
I haven't thought
length.
as
I like your
much.
Oh, these are old. This is
Yes,
the newest one. You barely ever do this. Like
yes,
one a
no,
year
that's,
from you?
yep, something like that. I'm not that good at just making content.
All right, so we
Like,
can look for the next great one in
yeah,
2026.
yeah,
Subscribe
exactly,
now.
exactly. Wait in anticipation. Yeah. So, what were we talking about? Homogenizing. Yes, that is probably a better word, because both of them would like reduce the structure as opposed to fertility, which increases the complexity, increases something.
You can tell me if this is a simplified thing, but like for me, the male perspective is uh, the wall of protection, be the walled garden, like, and the female perspective is make this place nice.
Um, I think that works when they are mixing with each other. Like, I think that works once they're already sort of
Yeah, once the
interweaving to
men
some
have built the
degree.
wall.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You need the wall to have the garden, and you need the garden to justify the wall.
Yeah.
But, like, it's also to go to the other end. The crunchy end is like, I figured this out, or I stumbled across it really when I was thinking about truth, is that I found a hard dichotomy to do with frequency of attention switching. So to do with maximization and minimization. So when you're trying to move points further apart, the frequency that you'll change, so like if you have one point that's stationary and the other one you're trying to push apart, the frequency that you're switching your attention in terms of which way you're trying to push is going to go down and down and down the more successful you are, the further you get apart. So you're going to switch your attention less often. But if you're trying to do balance, then the closer you get, the more and more often you're going to have to switch your direction, switch which way you're pushing.
Yeah.
Because, like, balance, the finer you get it, the more sort of delicate and detailed you want to be. And so there's this hard dichotomy between some things which you'd want to, some tasks which might be more balancing, which would require a very high frequency of attention switching, and some ones which do fit questing more, which you'd want to really be able to focus on one thing. And so the wall would be like that. You're really just thinking about one thing, like, can things get in or out?
Right.
Whereas with a garden, you've got a lot of different plants that are all a little bit healthy or a little bit unhealthy, and they're all growing and shrinking and dying. Like, there's a lot of little things that you're focusing on, and which one's more important will change very often.
Yeah.
So it fits into that.
I like it.
And, like, yeah, and I think it makes even a lot of sense from an evolutionary perspective. Like, switching your attention and building up a lot of attention in one area are both quite difficult things to do. So if you have any kind of pair of creatures, it makes sense that one would specialize in one and one would specialize in the other.
But it's a man's world, man. It's not fair.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Then what would it? But then but even with all that, like you'd think it would be the sort of thing where you go, oh, then men have masculine side and a feminine side, and so do women. But then you'd say, oh, there's a big statistical difference between the average man and the average woman.
No, I take it to like, how does that scale if the family isn't destroyed?
How does it scale to what?
If the family isn't nuked, if you're not down to one man and one woman, right? But like, there's actually the whole network. How does that balancing of like, would there not naturally be hierarchies in the scaling as you add people to the perspective balancing?
Yes. So like, in terms of humans, like individually, I think you can make a lot of arguments. It's, one and one, right? But then when you look at like productive desires in an organization, you're going to have all of these other effects. Like, you have the hierarchy, which is like, do what the boss says, which is like a more masculine way of thinking. And you also have but you might also have like smaller companies, which are like looking for gaps in the market almost. And looking for something that's missing, like for a detail to compensate for something, would be a more feminine perspective, I think. I'm not sure if that's your question, though.
No, I'm specifically not corporate, but in familial.
Yeah,
yeah. Right.
You mean like in extended families? How do you do this?
It's almost like I picture a thing where and there's shared resources for like efficiency reasons, that like the sum output of the shadow matriarchy would be like giving the patriarch a list of things that need specific attention.
Yeah.
Because they're balancing all the things.
Yeah, we need more of this stuff. But in a yes, although this can be one of the tensions, right? Like, because if your attention is on a lot of different things, but you think you need more sort of focus to do them, then the dark side of the relationship would be like nagging, right? Where the list is too long and the masculine perspective can't function anymore because there's too many things on it.
Like both sides of the system are subject to overwhelm.
Yes. And so, like, the other one...
If she's dealing with the whole garden and your wall lets a rat in...
Yeah.
Right? Then...
Yeah. And it's also, like... like guaranteeing resources. Like, one of the most common masculine perspectives would just be money, right? Because it's like... if you're only going to focus on one thing for a while, it's not an unreasonable thing to focus on for a bit to help a garden. And then you just give the feminine money, and then they use it to, buy a little bit of fertilizer or whatever's appropriate.
I think that it's a dangerous oversimplification.
Yeah, it is.
And
because because the other thing about questing is you have to realize once a quest, it's not like you never switch your attention. Like, quests come to an end, right? And then sometimes it's like, sometimes people will be like, well, I have to think about money for a while. But then you have to realize, well, I need to stop doing that after a certain point and think about something else for a bit. It's like...
I don't know.
Yeah, also games break down. Sometimes,
I'm to the point I'm fantasizing, like, sustainability without denominational acquirement.
Oh, yeah. You mean like religious structure?
No, I mean like homesteading. Like, you focus on the money until you can buy land that's productive, and hopefully a community that's productive, because ideally you and your neighbors are sharing food and not all going to Walmart.
It's tricky though.
That's like, I try to figure out where we should be aiming. Like, not only as individuals, but as collectives of people in our age brackets.
Yeah. This is also a big question of scale, right? Because scale just changes things fundamentally. I heard like a great study of something. Well, someone told me they'd seen a study where like someone looked at all the different Protestants and all their diversity because they're trying to find the best leadership structure. And they're like, who does this leadership structure? Who does that leadership structure? But what they found is that pretty much everybody did a structure based on how big they were. Like, if you're a mega church, you have to have, like, this archetypal superhero style pastor. Like, that's the only way to have a mega church. And then as you have the smaller churches, they have different structures as you go down.
What do you think about the notion of the triune body of Christ? Where Protestants are like the spirit, and I guess Catholicism is the body, and
I don't know, that
is the Father. I don't know how
maybe it might be overcooking a little bit. I'm not sure if
a little bit overcooking.
Yeah. There might be fun you can get out of it, but like I wouldn't push it all the way.
I like it because like the variety that explains the variety in the Protestants.
Yeah,
all the different spirits that move through there.
Yeah.
It's got an appeal.
Yeah. Oh, actually, because it's also relying on like, I can sort of see a little bit of it. Where the Protestants have the invisible church, and it's like, the spirit sort of thing, vibes-based religion a bit.
They call it the low church.
Yeah.
Is it? And it's
exactly
the blasphemy against the Protestants.
Yeah, low because you can't build your Tower of Babel high enough for them.
Well, that's where the people are.
Yeah.
So you go to church? You're a church guy?
Yep. Go to a low church.
What flavor? What flavor Protestant?
I think it's Open Brethren, which is like Baptist-costal or
Baptist-costal?
Sort of. No, it's not Baptist-costal. It's more like Baptist than it is like anything else. But we're like the most liberal Open Brethren church, which means the women don't wear hats and they're allowed to preach.
But do they preach the Rainbow Creed?
No.
That's the fun one.
Yeah. No, nobody talks about the Rainbow Creed because it's if you're small enough, you can fly under the radar of a lot of these issues. Sometimes.
True. We only see the ones that don't.
Yeah.
Right? In the Panopticon. So does your branch of Christianity believe in demons?
Yeah, that option's definitely open.
Does
People would only sometimes talk about it.
Do they acknowledge the world is run by Satanists?
No, definitely not. Too many people in government institutions for that.
Growing with the tares, right up in there.
Yeah. It's like...
Alright, so I don't know that the whole perspective and potential and what was the other one?
Image.
Yeah. I don't know that. How do I use that to understand the world? Because you're going with like a pretty...
Yeah.
It's a big claim in your title there.
I should... Yeah, so... I won't claim anything is divinely inspired. I do think that God wanted me to start making ideas, but I didn't know what to call the channel. And so I just sat in the bath and I said, God, what should I call this? And he told me to call it this, How to Understand the World.
So
that's the...
Or is it just like the next thought that pops into your head after you point a thought at God? The next one's from him? Or how did this...
it wasn't taken. Yeah.
It wasn't taken yet when you looked.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a sign.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's like... It doesn't... The ideas would not count as divinely inspired. Definitely not. They're sort of, things I've built. But... What's it? In terms of how to use a metaphysic, it really depends... I think ideas I do think are fundamentally secular, right? They're to do with worldly power, control, truth is a type of power. Desire for truth is a type of hunger for power. Like,
I don't know,
all of
propositions maybe. Ideas
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
a little too loose.
Okay, yeah, propositions, sure. Like, but the point of it is, in a lot of ways, when I say affirm God of the gaps, another big element of that is sort of the difference between spirit and reason, or spirit and straightforwardness. Well, I think they're to do with how, like, translatable something is. So, with the spirit, context is very difficult to translate because there's a lot of it and it changes very quickly. And so, it's you had to be there, right? And so spirit, I think, is your internal sense that is looking at all of the context, whereas reason is like the opposite. It's building up little models, little, like, things in your brain that you can give to other people very easily. So, like, like maths is a really good, the easiest example, where you can just write down an equation, send it to someone in Pakistan, and they know what you meant, right? Like, it's really easy to translate. But then spiritual stuff, it's sort of like, like a lot of the time you don't even say what it was, you're just like, this is how I felt about seeing this thing, or this is what it meant to me, and it's like, either you get it or you don't, and you had to be there a lot of the time. Yeah, so I think that God, in all the ways that God is certain, the ways he presents himself to us, is in the Holy Spirit. It's in the way that isn't really translatable. So you can just, what is the Christian thing? You give your testimony of your life or whatever, You live it and people see you how you live, like, what is it, you'll know them by their love. It's all of that sort of thing. Where it's about changing, power in the context. But not... God has never written his name in flaming letters across the sky, right, to sort of prove to all the scientists that he exists. And so I think, I think that's fairly intentional, I reckon.
Oh, I think that proving he exists would violate free will.
Yeah, me too.
So
various other things.
It feels like that's a rule that's been set for the realm we exist in.
Yeah.
Because, like, you can walk into a church and, like, have something else waggle your tongue.
Yeah.
And still lose faith. So...
Yeah.
It's kind of...
Yeah, it's sort of... you sort of have the doubts and then you sort of want to pridefully grasp the... you want certainty, right? You want control of things. But then God doesn't like to give it to you, usually. The tighter you clutch, the harder it is to see God sometimes. But then how to understand the world is about clutching, it's about grasping and understanding things. So in that sense...
like an optimal grip.
Yeah. Like, you have all of these things... Yeah, like, it's not... You can be a good Christian and not really think much at all. And so that's fine, but it's not about that. It's about when people have problems, right? Like, people have to have a question for me to do anything, right? It's like, like, I can destroy obstacles to somebody's faith, but I'm not going to make them believe. It's like, yeah, but I do think that this metaphysic, like, when I apply it, I keep getting answers to, like, various paradoxes, or, like, when a tree falls in a forest, is there a sound to hear it? Like, all of these sorts of things come out very tidily. They sort of stop being confusing when you apply the method. But it would only be any use...
That one as an example for those people that aren't with us.
What, sorry? Use that one?
Yeah, you said it's all elegant solutions.
Yeah, so the problem with that one is you're just conflating two different perspectives. So, the tree falls in the forest, but no one's there to hear it. Does it make a sound? So there's the perspective of being close enough to hear it fall, and the perspective of us in the story knowing it's fallen, but not having heard it. And so it's basically saying, if you can understand that these are two perspectives, the question doesn't really... It's not a problem. If you're close enough to hear it, it makes a sound. If you can't hear it, it doesn't make a sound. If you're told it makes a sound, then you've been told it makes a sound. And if it falls and then you go and look, you can retroactively say, oh, this did make a sound in the past, but you can only say that once you've gone and looked. Like, once you carefully slice all the different frames of view apart, there's no confusion anywhere. There's no argument.
I don't know, man. I think it's more of a thing that says it's determining whether or not, like, it's a question of whether or not you call it sound. Like, I don't know that we question whether or not but the fall of the tree in the forest would make a vibration.
I would.
Yeah.
Because a vibration's the same thing as a sound. It's an image.
Right.
You have to. That's just a vibration is just something you're touching and you feel, as opposed to something you're hearing and you feel.
I don't know that there has to be a feeler for it to be a thing. I think
there does. There does. Yeah, you need some kind of sensing device. So if you say it's a vibration, or you say there's atoms bouncing around, like, you need to imagine a way to look at the atoms to say there are atoms bouncing around. So like whenever you say something is there, whenever you make a claim that there's an object or an image, you're inherently sort of inventing a hypothetical sensor, a hypothetical perspective to look. And like, it can get very confusing because, there's people can start running backwards, running backwards out the head of all these different cameras they're putting up very quickly. So you think, I think about my hand, then I think about the fact that I'm thinking about my hand, then I think about the fact that I'm thinking about, and these sorts of things, and you try to look at it from one angle, look at it from another angle, and change which words you use. But it's all the same sort of thing where you're, the in-the-momentness can't ever be looked at. Because every time you try to look at it, you've automatically left that moment, and now you're trying to take a different angle.
You're creating a hypothetical reality in your
exactly
basis of if no one's around, right?
Yeah, so, and there's all these sort of hypotheticals, and you just keep making new ones, all you like.
Yeah, but you model them off of reality.
Yeah.
That you've experienced.
Or you model them off, internally consistent networks of translation. So you can say, if I were to translate my perspective from this place to that place, this is what I would see. Right?
I'm going more from the angle like that physics is consistent whether or not it's observed.
Yes, and the consistency enables translations, is what I would say.
So, like, the effects that would happen when a tree falls in my presence are identical to the effects that would happen if I was not there. I mean, aside from me perceiving it and getting away out.
If there's no perspective, nothing happens. Because for a thing to be a thing, it has to be an image.
I don't know that a plant doesn't have a perspective. But
me neither. I think a plant might. Like, because it's just being, right? Like
it's an interface between a mind and senses.
Maybe, but I think it could even be just more primal than that. Like the verb to be. I think a rock can be a rock. Because I just don't know what else it could be doing. And then, in the simplest sense, I could say, well, if a branch falls and hits a rock, the rock senses it by shaking a bit and maybe a bit chips off. And, that is a sense, sort of. But, a rock wouldn't have the capacity to... it wouldn't have the capacity to understand that a tree is green, or that it makes sounds, or, it probably wouldn't record a vibration. A vibration would probably just pass through it and then keep going. So, the record would... from a rock's perspective of a tree falling, most of the record would disappear. It's
the argument that a rock has any record is impressive.
Yeah. Well, if it leaves some permanent imprint on it, it's sort of like a record.
A deformation is a record. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I can take that.
Yeah. But also, like, I think the sense of permanence we have is because our memories perspective and our sensory perspectives get very tightly linked together. So, like, I don't have the sense when I walk into the pantry of exploring the unknown because it's already filled in by my memory. Right? Like, I sort of open the door and my expectations are already there. They get projected onto what I see, and it's basically the same thing. So, like, you know, you can get surprised when your memory predicts something that you don't see.
Oh no, we're out of corn
It's
pops.
like, yeah, yeah. But then, like, yeah, the persistence we carry is like, you know, it's like maintained by translating between our memory and our senses and merged all together in like our mind's eyes, you know, our worldview sort of thing. You know, we sort of walk around in this big shiny world full of stuff, and it's a synthesis of all the different sensory information. But then I also think we have other internal senses like reason and spirit sense or mind's eye or whatever, which looks at the internal world as opposed to being like an external sense.
Like reason is a tulpa.
Is a what?
A
What?
tulpa. A
don't know what
thought
that is.
form. A thing in like just inside.
Yeah, I think it applies inside. But like,
The thing.
there is also a very important... Sorry,
Say
go
again?
on. Oh no, there's also an important property to do with alignment, right? Like, it's all to do with internal experience. There's only one perspective where like you can make things line up, and so if you seek things lining up, you're seeking consistency, you're seeking translatability, and you can sort of use just that property of alignment to sort of chain your perspectives one to the other to the next and enable you to translate like all sorts of things.
Okay. Mind that.
Yeah. Oh, what was I talking about before?
All
Something
sorts-
about how to understand the world and big claims and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean. It's
Yeah,
a
so
claim. It's a big.
it is.
People understand the world.
Yeah, it's a very big claim. So what it really would be is that, you know, I've always had lots of ideas and built little models and tools for things, right, to solve problems. But normally I have all these people, I go and I talk to them, and then they sort of break them apart and show, yeah, this doesn't work for that reason, and that sort of thing. But I kept doing that until the point where basically people stopped being able to break them down. And so it's like, they sort of have this problem, and I'm like, you know, and the answer sort of holds up. And so it's more a capacity that I think, you know, it's been a while since I've hit any of these really woolly issues. You know, the ones that get sort of fuzzy and fluffy and like people can't nail down what they're talking about. It's been a long time since I've hit one of those that I couldn't sort of sort out in less than a week or two.
Sounds like if anybody has one, they should bring it to you.
Exactly. Well, present your side quests here.
Let's see if you can defeat the champion of the channel.
Yeah, exactly.
That could be an effective reputation if you pull it off. We'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see. I don't know.
yeah. Could be fun.
Same time. Well then, I guess
Yeah.
we can leave it there.
Yeah, I think so. Keep it compact.
Conveniently in the description and whatnot. Keeping an eye
Yep.
out for next year when
Very
you
much.
release another video.
Yeah, do that. Maybe I'll have some duels or something with other people sort of in this corner of the internet.
Oh, I think there's plenty of people around you could disagree with, and
Yeah.
they'll pay you attention for that.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes. I'm excited.
Yep.
It was nice to
Well,
meet you.
yeah. Thanks for having me. It's been a great talk.